All right, this could take a while here, man. 10 seasons. 141 games played, which is the second most by a running back or fullback in Minnesota Vikings history. Two-time Pro Bowler, two-time Man of the Year, four-time team captain, and somebody who has changed my life, made me better in every aspect of my life by just being around him on a daily basis. And I know many of us feel the same way. When these type of players come into an organization, man, we're lucky. We are lucky to be around you every day. Your dad is a hero. Your dad is a phenomenal human being, and he's a dang good football player. C.J. Ham.
On January 4th of this year, the National Football League became one fullback poorer, as Cortez Thaddeus Ham Jr., affectionately known by fans as the Ham God, the Hammer, or just plain old CJ, played his final game as a Minnesota Viking. Many in Minnesota's fan base, and those of us who are just plain old fullback enjoyers, had speculated that this would be the end of his decade-long career, and Ham went ahead and made his retirement official on February 5th. Now, I'm sure many people, perhaps even some of you watching this video, saw this news pop up on your timeline and thought very little of it. I mean, after all, we're talking about a fullback here in the big 2026. However, for those of us who have followed CJ's career, it was a bittersweet moment watching one of the league's best step away. As a result, I figured this Fullback Friday would be best spent honoring Ham's legacy and perhaps creating a few new fans for him in the wake of his retirement. So without further ado, let's go ahead and turn back the clock to 2011 to talk about CJ Ham and his journey from Division II's Augustana University all the way to being a two-time Pro Bowler in the National Football League.
I'm originally from Duluth, Minnesota. That's where I grew up and went to high school there. I definitely didn't commit to Augustana University to go to the NFL. I committed here because of the academics. I knew I was going to get a great education. Augustana just really felt like home to me. It's a small community. I just felt welcomed right away.
Dating all the way back to high school, CJ Ham actually did not start out as a fullback. He played halfback at Duluth-Denfeld High School, where he totaled nearly 2,000 rushing yards and 24 touchdowns between his junior and senior seasons. Unfortunately, Ham did not receive any major collegiate scholarship offers, so he decided to walk on at Augustana University in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which, for those unaware, is a Division II school. Ironically, he had an opportunity to play for a more local team, being the Division II powerhouse Minnesota Duluth, but he did not end up going that route because they wanted him to play fullback and Ham had no interest in it. During his freshman season at Augustana University, CJ Ham appeared in 9 games, which included 3 starts. In an ironic twist, Ham was actually asked to play fullback his freshman year for Augustana, as they needed someone to block for sophomore running back Dejan Newell. Unfortunately, though, this would only last 1 year, as Ham would immediately turn back to playing halfback his sophomore year, where he would spend 2 years splitting carries before being given the starter treatment as a senior. As the full-time starter his senior year, Ham logged a career-high 1,097 yards and 16 touchdowns, making him only the 4th running back in school history to rack up 1,000 rushing yards in a season. This also put him just 71 yards shy of the school's single-season rushing record. His performance helped the Augustana Vikings to the postseason for the first time in multiple years, and also landed him a spot on the All-NSIC second team. Ham finished his collegiate career with 2,662 rushing yards on 570 carries, which is good for 4.7 yards per attempt, as well as 21 rushing touchdowns. He also proved his worth as a pass catcher, logging 949 yards on 96 receptions, adding an additional 6 touchdowns. Outside of football, Ham also excelled in track and field. His senior year was by far his best, as he won the weight throw event at the NSIC Indoor Championships. He also placed second in the shot put that year, with both performances landing him NCAA provisional marks. He also participated at the NWU Open that year, where he would go on to win both the shot put and weighted throw. In addition to excelling in football and track and field, Ham was also recognized off the field his senior year. He was given the NSIC Glenn Galligan Award, which is awarded to a 4-year student or athlete who stands out among their peers both academically and in terms of contributions to their university. In other words, in college, CJ Ham was a true triple threat, excelling as a football player, a track and field star, and as a member of his community.
CJ Ham is used to being a Viking. Though the colors are different this year and some other guy has his old number 28, it's still a perfect fit.
Following his collegiate career, Ham was not invited to the NFL Combine and would eventually go undrafted and unsigned. However, his performance at South Dakota State's Pro Day did garner the attention of the Minnesota Vikings, who would go on to invite him to participate in their rookie minicamp. Following that camp, Ham would go on to sign with the team, making him only the 5th player in Augustana history to sign with an NFL roster. As a rookie, Ham did not see any regular season action, spending the majority of the season on Minnesota's practice squad. However, going into the 2017 NFL season, veteran Vikings fullback Zach Line departed for New Orleans, and offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur needed a fullback. As a result of what some may consider to be fate, Ham was asked to switch over to fullback, and he accepted. This move, as we all know, led to nearly a decade of elite fullback play for the Minnesota Vikings.
Play action as he just gets rid of it, and in doing so gets it to C.J. Ham, and the big fullback breaks free. How about that?
That's a great job by Cousins, coming off, and he gets the ball off, and at that point, Ham breaks a tackle, KJ Wright doesn't make it.
As a fullback playing in the 2010s and 2020s, CJ Ham did not have the most productive career by normal NFL standards. On the ground, Ham carried the ball 42 times, resulting in 119 yards and 6 touchdowns, with his career long being just 30 yards. That being said, he was definitely more of a pass catcher than he was a true ball carrier, so it's no surprise that his receiving numbers exceed his rushing, with career totals of 84 receptions for 681 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as a career long of 36 yards. Now, I don't have to tell you that these numbers are far from illustrious and aren't really going to turn any heads, but Ham will not be remembered by history or by Vikings fans for what he did with the ball in his hands. Despite his protests heading into college, CJ Ham's NFL career will always be defined by what others were able to accomplish with his assistance.
Happy. Dalvin Cook says that way. 2-yard touchdown, Vikings.
Watch number 75. He's going to pull around, fullback leads. This is just a nice scheme. 75 pulls, Ham with a block, and that's a walk-in. Really good blocking by the offense.
The modern NFL fullback has obviously strayed away from the days of Mike Allstott, and instead has transformed into a role for blocking specialists who can wear multiple hats for their given team. CJ Ham is a textbook example of this, as he was able to make a career for himself despite that lack of production by paving the way for his teammates and contributing on special teams. In 2018, CJ Ham was named the Vikings Special Teams Player of the Year, and his play on special teams continued throughout his career well into his 30s. In fact, all the way up until his final game as a member of the Vikings, he was out there making plays on kicks and punts. And while that obviously isn't flashy, fullbacks nowadays need to be able to contribute on special teams. And Ham is, again, a prime example of one of those who rose to the occasion and made sure to give his all when he was out there on kicks and punts. However, the main task of the modern fullback, if we're being real here, is to help set up for their running back. As a Minnesota Viking, Ham had some pretty big shoes to fill in this regard. Looking at their history, Bill Brown was a versatile staple for Minnesota in the 1960s, Ted Brown was the pinnacle of consistency for the team in the 80s, Jim Kleinsasser went mostly unrecognized but proved to be a great role player for 13 years in Minnesota, NFL legend Tony Richardson helped pave the way for rookie Adrian Peterson, Jerome Felton took that mantle from Richardson to assist Peterson en route to his MVP season in 2012, then you have Zach Line, who came right before Ham, that was a very quality player, and Ham had to step in behind them all starting in 2016. During Ham's tenure as Minnesota's starting fullback, he definitely lived up to the expectations laid before him. He blocked for 5 1,000-yard rushers, as well as a trio of guys who went for over 700 yards in a season. This included a big-time year from Aaron Jones in 2024, a trio of solid seasons from Jordan Mason, Alexander Mattison, and Latavius Murray in 2025, 2023, and 2017 respectively, but in my opinion, his biggest contribution was to Dalvin Cook's back-to-back-to-back-to-back 1,000-yard Pro Bowl seasons. He may not have blocked for an MVP like Jerome Felton or produced as much as either Brown or Brown, but Ham's impact on the Vikings of the 2010s, and especially Dalvin Cook's career in particular, is undeniable. 2019 was the peak of the marriage between Cook and Ham, in my opinion, solely because both players were appropriately recognized for their work. Cook recorded his first 1,000-yard season, finishing with 1,100 yards and 13 touchdowns on 250 carries. As a result, both Cook and Ham were named to the Pro Bowl that year, something that the two would not share for the remaining 3 seasons during Cook's dominant 4-year stretch. Now, I do want to address the elephant in the room real quick with that. The reason Ham did not get named to more Pro Bowls and did not receive more recognition is because he was always stuck in the shadow of what many would say is the best fullback of the modern era in Kyle Juszczyk. In fact, both of Ham's Pro Bowl appearances came in years where Kyle Juszczyk was busy in the Super Bowl. So if it was not for the 49ers being a good football team and making it to the big dance twice during CJ Ham's career, he most likely would have finished without a single Pro Bowl selection. Now, obviously, for a lot of players, this would really suck, spending your entire career in the shadow of another player at your position. But given what I've learned about CJ Ham in making this video and what I knew before making this video, I really don't think that's something that would bother him. CJ Ham is the type of guy that cares more about setting up for his teammates than getting the ball himself, which is ironic given his selection of college and what the deciding factor was. But genuinely, CJ Ham is one of the most selfless players the NFL has ever seen. But don't take my word for it. Let's take a look at this clip from his daughter, talking about just how selfless Mr. CJ Ham is.
My name is Skylar Ham. I'm 9 years old. My dad, CJ, does a lot of super cool things to make other people's lives better, but he doesn't like to tell people about them, so I will. Hi, my CJ. Hi, I'm CJ Ham, fullback from the Minnesota Vikings. Did you know I grew up in Minnesota? Duluth, to be exact. And when I was a little kid, my mom and dad taught me it's important to be a blessing to other people. I also learned a lot about the Boys and Girls Club. I spent a lot of time there while my mom and dad worked, and it helps me to stay out of trouble. Now that I'm a grown-up, I want to show love to families and kids the way my parents and the Boys and Girls Club loved me. I like to visit the kids and play games with them and sing songs like Frozen. My daughter, Skylar, likes that one too. There's lots of other stuff I do too. Football camps, book fairs, and trick-or-treating at the Children's Hospital. I have a really big heart. Ask anyone. They'll tell you. If I win the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, I can do even more things to help people. So vote for me, CJ Ham.
While Ham may not have as many Pro Bowl selections as guys like Kyle Juszczyk or Patrick Ricard, he does have 2 Walter Payton Man of the Year nominations, which I would argue is a little bit more prestigious. Now, unfortunately, while Ham did not win the award for either of his 2 nominations, it does not change the impact that he has had on countless lives through his local Boys and Girls Clubs. However, it would seem that that has already been covered by Skylar Ham, so why don't I go ahead and focus on CJ Ham, the teammate. During his career as a Minnesota Viking, CJ Ham was named a team captain 4 times, specifically his final 4 years with the team. However, if you ask any of his teammates, I'd imagine they'll tell you that he was one of the team's most influential leaders during that time. Brian O'Neill, Ham's teammate and offensive cohort from 2018 onward, once said, quote, "If we had 53 CJ Hams on the roster, we'd really be in a great spot." That's pretty high praise for a fullback, considering what their value is in the NFL today. But obviously, CJ Ham's value goes beyond the field and matters just as much, if not more, to the people off the field. O'Neill also once stated that Ham exemplifies a team-first attitude, which sets a great example for a lot of the younger guys that come in, inspiring them to act the same way. So in some ways, one could argue that CJ Ham was working towards Brian O'Neill's goal of having 53 CJ Hams on the roster. Because at the end of the day, it sounds like being CJ Ham just means being a really good teammate. CJ Ham also once said in an interview with Tom Buring of the Christian Broadcasting Network that his role as a fullback helped him realize how much value there is in serving others as opposed to serving oneself. Given what has been presented, it's clear that Ham has embodied this fullback mindset both on and off the field, serving as a protector for his teammates and those who need his help day in and day out. The more you learn about CJ Ham, the type of man he is, and the level of commitment he has to his team and teammates, his career starts to make more and more sense. Spending 9 years at a thankless position on a team that failed to reach a championship, grinding day after day as both a fullback and special teamer well into his 30s, putting those around him before himself, that is who CJ Ham is. He's not the superstar who makes the highlight reel every week. He's the guy who's gonna make sure everyone around him eats no matter what. And despite his initial protests, I cannot think of a more fitting role for him in his career than being an NFL fullback.
This game has meant so much to me my entire life. Being able to be with y'all, be with this organization, be with KO, you guys, man, it means the absolute world to me. I know it's gonna be hard to step away, but I know it's time for me to be with my family. It's time for me to watch them grow up, be soccer dad. But these years are times that I'm never gonna forget. Man, I truly, truly love each and every one of you. And man, my phone is always on. Whatever you need at any time, I'm here for you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I love y'all.
I know I touched on it briefly, but when I sat down to initially script this video, I was going to include a whole section where I went in depth as to why Ham only received those 2 Pro Bowl nominations against Kyle Juszczyk, and, do a statistical analysis of Ham should have gotten it this year and this year because of X, Y, and Z. But the deeper I got into this script, the more I realized something. Who cares? Genuinely. I don't know the man personally, but as I've said already, I really do not think CJ Ham is the kind of person to care about Pro Bowls or All-Pros or anything of the sort. I'm sure he'd much rather be appreciated by his teammates, those who he has impacted off the field, and of course, the fans in Minnesota. Do me a favor and take a moment and listen to this crowd acknowledging Ham after his final game as a Viking.
Vikings Nation, I love y'all.
CJ, I want you to take this moment in.
I'm sure this moment right here is sweeter than any award or recognition from the NFL and fans outside of Minnesota. This here is a man who has laid it all on the line for his team and his community, being recognized for his hard work and dedication, all while knowing this chapter of his life is officially behind him. As a fan of Ham and his work in this sport, I might be a little biased, but this is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen on a football field. Now, even as a fan of one of his career-long rivals, I have nothing but respect and admiration for CJ Ham. I can confidently say the league will not be the same without Ham setting key blocks and making plays on special teams every week, but I'm quite confident in saying whatever comes for him next will be special. From humble beginnings as a walk-on at a D2 college, to ending his career on top with a touchdown in front of his home crowd and being a genuine difference maker in his community, CJ Ham is undoubtedly a Minnesota Vikings legend.
Had a chance on the throwback. This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow. Using that